Good morning, 7th grade. It's Mr. K, your art teacher, welcoming you to another How to Draw lesson. Actually, we'll integrate a little bit of painting today, which is an exciting time for us. We finally get to try out our mud painting creation. Before we get to that, however, let's finalize a few details associated with our bear drawing. Yesterday, I took a Sharpie marker, if you recall, and I created a bunch of texture lines simply by adding a bunch of hatch marks all over the place. We put them all over the rock and certainly all over the bear, and I think it's created a nice little look for our creature friend. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a little bit to the background. I'm going to refer back to the 2-point perspective pieces that we created last week and the week before. And if you remember how we had some hills bumping into one another, casting shadows upon each other. Let me fix that little boo-boo there. Okay, in referring back to them, what I'm trying to say is I think they'll make a nice addition to our bear piece. It's a little bit of a cast shadow where the hills meet. Okay, that looks really, really nice. Okay, and then beyond him also, borrowing from the perspective piece, I'm going to pencil in some fluffy clouds. Maybe Bob Ross would call them happy little clouds. I think he might. And quickly, let's give the clouds some detail, lights and darks. And I'm not even going to smear or smudge those with my blending stump because I'm going to immediately hit up those lines with my Sharpie. And the cast shadow will be created through several hatch marks, one on top of the other. Let's bring that hill out the other side. Let's put some shadow there. Let's run this fella off the page with a little bit of shadowing inside him too. I like that. Let's work around these clouds with some Sharpie. Many artists like to refer to this type of creation as pen and ink. In the old days, they would have simply dipped the quill of the pen into the ink, hence the name pen and ink. It's a fun little way to create some nice artistic values and some nice results. I had a lot of fun this week. Hope you did too. Okay, I like that. Let's get on to some mud painting experimentation here, okay? So here's what I did. You remember the other day I showed you the baggie filled with dirt. It's still here, and I didn't even really use all of it, so I had way more than I needed. Okay, pardon my reach here. I'm going to grab a little water, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a little water to one container, and I didn't add very much there, by the way, maybe a couple teaspoonfuls, if that. And I wanted to experiment with something else to the right. Okay, this is some vegetable oil, and I'm going to try a little bit of vegetable oil mixed in with the mud to the right. And you don't have to do this if you don't have the vegetable oil. Again, I'm just putting in a little bit, maybe one more little drop. If you don't have vegetable oil at home, don't worry, no worries. I'm pretty sure the water mixture will do just fine. Now, let's see here. I picked out a couple brushes from my studio, round brushes with a pointy tip, and I'm going to have one for each mixture, but I'm certainly aware of the fact, I'm going to put the oil to the right there for a moment, and I'm certainly aware of the fact that you may not have paintbrushes at your house, so here's what I'm recommending if you don't. Q-tips. Okay, so let's try the water mixture first, and I'm just getting my paintbrush in there, and I'm moving it around, mixing it up, and creating our mud paint. And now what I'm doing is I'm putting a wash of the mud paint onto our friend the bear. And I like how it's spreading so far. It reminds me very much of watercolor. Very easy to work with. And not too hard or difficult to control. There's such a joy in painting. It's really rather relaxing and enjoyable, as many of you know. Now, before I get too far along here, let me put that brush down and let me try out our Q-tip friend here. For any of us at home that don't have access to a regular paintbrush. Got a little root or something in there. Now, it's not quite as effective as my paintbrush is. Let me get that root off of there. It's not quite as effective, but it's still, I think, quite useful. Okay, so there's the answer to whether or not the Q-tip works. I think it does. Okay, back to my paintbrush here. And I am able, I don't know if you can tell on the video or not, I am able to control a little bit of the darkness and lightness of the paint. For example, if you wanted a darker area, dip into some heavier mud inside your cup, and if you want it to be lighter in spots, go with a more watery mixture of the medium. Okay, alright, so before I do a little something with the background, let me set aside the water mud paint what's going on with the oil mud paint. And I gotta tell you, I don't think it's as workable and as usable as the watery version. It's just not saturating the mud enough, and we're not able to spread the particles of dirt as well. So I say that the oil mud paint is not as good as the water base. So let me go back to the water base. Okay, and I'm just going to touch up a few of the final areas here. Let's give him a little bit of color in that ear. And if you have way more time than oh no, don't get me wrong, I could paint all day. But what I'm saying is, in terms of the video here, if you have way more time than let that first layer dry a little bit, and then if you have areas where you want to put some darker values in, go ahead and do that. Definitely let the paper dry a little bit first before you hit it up with a second layer. And when you're looking for particular areas where you can darken, just think about where some shadows might hang out. For example, if I was coming back in with a second layer, I might hit up underneath his fur there on his neckline, because he's leaned forward there, and I could definitely see there being some shadows under his chin, and maybe in here on his belly a little bit, because his arms would cast some shadows, and there might be some darker values here where this particular leg meets the lower torso of the bear. Okay, so you got to think like an artist, and think about where the light source would be and where the shadows would be cast. I'm very happy with the mud painting. Okay, so let me set the mud paint aside, and I'm not going to color the entire remaining portion of my piece, but I do want to encourage you all, if you have the time, to do so. So here's just a quick example of what you could do with the background in the sky. Okay, so I grabbed up a marker here, kind of a nice purpley shade, and I'm going all one direction in the sky. And I'm not a huge marker advocate, but I thought for this particular background it might look kind of nice, because I think we've had discussions in the past about how some dark colors in the background can push a figure or an object into the foreground. So darkness in the background equals pushing the figure or object forward into the foreground. bear with me, no pun intended, haha. Bear with me, I'm going to turn it upside down and finish the other side here. It's a little cumbersome being that some of it is still a little wet. But notice, even though I've turned the page upside down, I'm still dragging my marker straight across the page in a very uniform motion and direction. You get to the edge of the page, sometimes I cheat a little bit and go a different direction, but not all that much. And if you're working on the kitchen dinner table, probably put a paper underneath so that any strokes that go off of the artwork don't mess up Mom's table too much. Okay. Let's tidy up this side a little bit. Okay, now you'll have more of an opportunity to look for the missing areas of marker than I will. You know, lots of times on these videos I got to keep a frantic pace going so that you kids don't get bored, and I don't ever want the videos to get too lengthy in nature, so I try to adjust and kind of go with the flow and finish what I can, but I always encourage you guys to finish color the entire way. I grabbed up a colored pencil here to give a little colorization to the background hill, and it actually looks real nice against the purple. So green and purple go real well together, and they complement each other very nicely. Checking the time on the video here. We're almost to 18 minutes, so I don't want to go too much longer. But let's see our little progress shot. Yeah, I really do enjoy that, and I like it. Okay, one last thing I'm going to do, if I can, before we sign off, is I'm going to find a darker shade of green in order to contrast between the two greens. There's a lighter green, and I'm wondering if I can find me a darker shade of a green, and I'm not finding one in my colored pencils. Let me look one more spot. There we go. I think I found something. My studio's in need of a good cleaning. I don't know if I mentioned that last week or not, but it holds true still. I do keep it tidy in spurts, but lots of times it gets away from me. It's a happy mess, though, I can assure you. There's lots of fun things go on in this little studio of mine. And I'm very pleased to be able to entertain you and instruct you as best I can in this very strange and difficult time that we find ourselves in. I'm going really fast here, trying to fix up the final areas. I'm going to leave that rock alone because I don't want this recording to stop on me before I say goodbye. I know that my tablet stops working after a while if my video goes too long. So I put happy drawing, Mr. K. I'm going to put one more thing. I'm going to remind myself that this was mud paint. I think the mud paint turned out really, really awesome. Boys and girls, thank you. Don't forget to post your assignment, your mud painting, by 3 o'clock today. Very, very important. Deficiencies go out next week, and I don't want anybody to have any zeros. So check all your assignments for completion. Turn in what is missing, because if it's not turned in, it's going to be a 0, and that will really damage your grade. Happy drawing. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. We'll talk next week. Bye-bye.